This is Professor Cruz. Last week we started by introducing the research method called geographic inquiry. Geographic inquiry calls for us to ask geographic questions, collect geographic information, explore the information, analyze it, and act upon our findings, and answer the question. This week we will begin to supplement the geographic inquiry method with basic concepts to give you the background to successfully collect, explore, and analyze your data. Often the geographic information collected as we respond to our question is presented in the form of a map. We explored several types of maps last week. Maps are used for reference, so to determine where things are located, and for the communication of the distribution of some feature or features. The reference map on the top left shows the location of the University of the District of Columbia on Connecticut Avenue within the District of Columbia. You can also see other features on this map that might help you figure out how to get to the District of Columbia. The choropleth map on the bottom left shows the change in the population by ward between the years 2000 and 2010. What patterns do you notice in the population change for this time period? The data would be collected to answer the question, how and where did the population of the District of Columbia change between 2000 and 2010? This data was obtained from using data collected by the 2000 and 2000 U.S. Census. I encourage you to visit the Census Bureau at www.census.gov and also the Office of Planning in the District of Columbia at dc.gov to explore demographic data for the nation and the District of Columbia. Again, the U.S. Census Bureau, www.census.gov, and the Office of Planning for the DC government at dc.gov. Human geography is the study of the relationships between people and places and the spaces in which they live. Another modern geographic method used to collect data is remote sensing, which is the acquisition of data about the Earth's surface and items on the Earth's surface from a satellite orbiting Earth or from airplanes. At any moment, a satellite sensor records the image of a tiny area called a pixel. A map created by remote sensing is essentially a grid that contains many rows of pixels. Geographers use remote sensing to map the changing distribution of a wide variety of features such as agricultural, drought, and urban sprawl. These features were collected from the Goddard Space Flight Center camera high above Earth. The camera first shows the whole United States and eventually zooms to focus in on the U.S. Capitol. This is an example how remote sensing can be used to show an area from a global to a local perspective. We can first see the district within the concept of its rivers, and then we can really see the specific outline of the Capitol as well as the houses surrounding the Capitol. So if you lived around the Capitol, you could see your house and your neighborhood. Go to Google Maps and give this a try. See if you can actually find your house and then work Google Maps so you could see the picture of your house as if you were standing on the street in front of it. Satellites are also used to reference locations on the ground. GPS, or Global Positioning Systems, is most commonly used for navigation. Pilots of aircrafts and captains of ships use GPA to stay on course. So do drivers and walkers in the District of Columbia. On land, GPS detects a vehicle or person's current position. You can program the desired location or destination into your GPS device. In this case, most of the time we're using our phones, and then the device will provide instructions on how to reach a destination. So I recently served on a jury where GPS was an important piece of evidence for the prosecution. It answered the question, where was a particular person who was on parole and was wearing a GPS anklet, where was this person at a particular time? It was essential for the decision made in this case. For those of you who need to know where your children are, your elderly parent, or even your spouse, you know you can program your smartphone to locate the person you want to locate. Before we all had smartphones, we used old school technology such as maps. All maps are based on a standardized geographic coordinate system, which gives each place a unique mathematical value based on its latitude and longitude. Mathematical location describes a place's absolute location using a coordinate system. Longitude is culturally defined as starting at Greenwich, England, and is located by that red line going vertically on the globe shown here. It measures the degrees east and west of that line of longitude. The 0-degree longitude line in Greenwich, England is known as the prime meridian. Latitude measures north and south distance with the equator. So you can see the 0 point on this grid, which represents the equator that goes horizontally around the globe. It measures the equator is located halfway between the north and south poles. A latitude line is known as a parallel because all latitude lines are parallel to the equator. The equator is the parallel with the greatest circumference and is the baseline for measuring latitude. UDC is located at 38.9 degrees north latitude and 77 degrees west longitude. You need to have a basic understanding of latitude and longitude, know what the prime meridian is, know where the equator is as we go through this semester. So please find YouTube videos and read other overviews to help you understand this concept. A place name, also called a toponym, is the most common way of describing a location. Place names often reflect the cultural history of a place, and a change of place name is often culturally motivated. The Board of Geographical Names was established in the late 19th century to be the final arbiter of place names on U.S. maps. In recent years, this board has been especially concerned with removing offensive place names. Just last year, after decades of lobbying by the people of Alaska, the name Denali, the highest mountain in North America, was officially restored by the Board of Geographical Names. In the late 19th century, this mountain had been named Mount McKinley after President McKinley. The name Denali was restored by the state of Alaska in 1975, but not officially renamed by the U.S. until September 2015. The Secretary of Interior at the time stated, "This name change recognizes the sacred status of Denali to many Alaska natives." We also describe a location by referencing its site. The site talks about the physical characteristics or immediate environment of a place. Important site characteristics include climate, water sources, topography, soil, vegetation, latitude, and elevation. The combination of physical features gives a place a distinctive character. While people disagree on the attributes of a good location for settlements, and obviously this changes over time, sometimes a good site depends on people's cultural values. In this slide, Washington, D.C. is shown in regards to the immediate site on the Potomac and Anacostia rivers, the city, the suburbs, the parks, and various transportation arteries. This is a reference map. The following description describes the site of Washington, D.C. D.C. is located in the northern and western hemispheres. It is located in the mid-latitudes. It is in the humid subtropical climate zone, dominated by deciduous forest vegetation. It's located on the Potomac and Anacostia rivers and is bisected by Rock Creek. DC is located on the Atlantic coastal plain. This map places Washington, D.C. within a broader context or situation. Its location in relation to other parts of the East Coast, located near the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean, and to various river systems in the United States. The term situation describes a place in terms of its relative location, if its location relative to other places. Understanding a situation can help locate an unfamiliar place in terms of known places, or can help explain the significance of a place. We give directions to people by referring to the situation. We identify important buildings, streets, and other landmarks to direct people to a desired location. The situation here, Washington, D.C. is about 40 miles from the Chesapeake Bay and is about 230 miles southwest of New York City's Pennsylvania train station. D.C. is surrounded by the Capital Beltway, which links the area to I-95, the major highway on the United States East Coast. When we talked about where firebirds were born, some of you stated that most were born in the mid-Atlantic region. This is one of the formal regions of the United States. A region is a unique area on Earth defined by one or more distinctive characteristics. A particular place can be included in more than one region, depending on how the region is defined. A region gains uniqueness from possessing not a human or a single human or environmental characteristic, but a combination of them. It represents the total sum of cultural, economic, environmental forces to make areas distinct. This map places Washington, D.C. in the region of North America. So already we've located D.C. within the mid-Atlantic. We've located it in North America. What other regions is the District of Columbia in? Well, it's in the region called the United States, or the country called the United States. And this map shows the states that make up the United States. So formal regions have well-defined boundaries usually. The shared feature can be a cultural value, such as a common language, or property such as climate. It can be boundaries that are surveyed and geographically distinct. Some formal regions may be easily to identify, such as countries or local government units. Formal regions such as countries, states, and cities all share the same laws, government, etc. Now, another example of a formal region is the North American wheat belt, which is a formal region where wheat is the most commonly grown crop, but other crops there are grown as well. This formal regions map from the U.S. Census Bureau places the District of Columbia in the south, and also in the South Atlantic subregion. Now you can pause this and look at the regions defined by the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau's regions are different from the U.S. district court system. So now we've placed the District of Columbia in North America, in the United States, and we're now placing it in the South and the South Atlantic region, and we talked about being in the Mid-Atlantic region. In the U.S. court system, D.C. is located in the 4th District Court. Generally, formal regions are made up of measurable characteristics. The Köppen climate classification system is used worldwide. So this map places the United States areas in different climate regions, and so we can find that the United States has probably about 8 different climate regions. The measurements used to make up the classification include temperature and precipitation, but also include other factors. On this map, Washington, D.C. is located in the humid subtropical climate region. And if you wanted to explore other regions, you could see that in north of the humid subtropic region is the humid continental cool summer region. So New York is placed in a different climate region than the District of Columbia. A functional region is a region defined by an area of use or influence of some feature. Often used in economic geography, functional regions have fuzzy boundaries as the influence of the center feature decreases over distance. The functional region is organized around a focal point, or sometimes this is called a node. A good example of a functional region you can think of as a radio station. So above we see the functional region of the station WAMU. So you can think about it as you are listening to a radio station and say you drive to Baltimore. The further you get away from where the node is or where the radio station antenna is, you can no longer hear that station so clearly. So this map shows the listening area for WAMU. The green areas have a good signal. The gray areas are out of the signal area. So as you move from the node, which actually is right near UDC, the station becomes more difficult to listen to. Can you think of some other functional regions? A vernacular or perceptual region is defined by people's feelings and attitudes about an area. Perceptual regions emerge from people's sense of place rather than scientific or measurable models. Perceptual regions are based on an individual's mental map, which is an internal representation of a portion of Earth's surface. A mental map depicts what an individual knows or think they know about a place, containing personal impressions of what is a place and where the place is located. They are frequently based upon stereotypes, as people's definitions of regions are influenced by travel, media, reading, films, and conversation. Therefore, perceptual regions are more likely than other kinds of regions to change over time. Can you think of some of the perceptions of the District of Columbia and how people view that region? So this map shows people's perceptual regions of North America. Where do you think the South begins and ends? Where is the Midwest? Where is it compared to the other maps that we saw, which were formal regions? Here is another example of perceptual regions for North America. So as you think about that dot distribution map that you've seen, some people have named that blue section the empty quarter. That's where the population is the least densely populated. The South as Dixie. What other perceptual regions can you think of? In world cultural geography, we are interested in how cultural phenomena are placed on the surface of Earth, and this is why we use maps extensively in this class, in your readings, and my presentations. Geographers use three terms to describe the arrangements of people, objects, and phenomena on Earth. Those terms are density, pattern, and concentration. Density is a mathematical concept used to examine the frequency with which something occurs in space. How many students per classroom? How many people per square mile? This choropleth map shows the population distribution of Egypt in 2000. The darkest color, which is dark reddish brown, represents the most densely populated areas at 1,000 or more people per square kilometer, while the unpopulated areas are shown in white, and the least densely populated areas are light gold. The population density is greatest, or the population is heavily concentrated along the Nile River. So you can see that the population straddles the Nile River. There are concentrations of people on the coast and on the Mediterranean and Red Seas. The dispersion of population beyond the delta, so that delta is that area that fans out, that goes towards the Mediterranean. So the dispersion of population beyond the delta is linear. The size of the population is not important, as the habitable area appears to be limited to the Nile River and its delta. The extent of a phenomenon's spread over space is concentration. When objects are close together, they are clustered. When they are relatively far apart, they are dispersed. So this image shows residential area concentrations. The top plan for a residential area has a lower density than the middle plan. So the top plan actually has 24 houses per the 82 acres of land, whereas the middle plan actually has more houses. It has 32 houses. But both have dispersed concentrations. The middle plan and lower plans have the same density. They both have 32 houses for 82 acres. But the distribution of the houses is more clustered in the lower plan, because the lower plan has shared open space, so the houses are clustered together, but the middle plan provides a larger private yards rather than the shared open space. So there's more space surrounding each house. Pause this and take some time to understand the concepts of concentration, dispersion, and density. These maps show the distribution of professional baseball teams in the United States in 1952 and 2013. On the top map, which represents 1952, the teams are clustered in the Northeast and Upper Midwest regions, where most of the population was concentrated at that time. So it's interesting. You look at this map and you see all the teams in the American and National Leagues. There are none in the South, and there were none in the West. By 2013, the teams were dispersed across the country. Although you'll still see a concentration or cluster in the northeast section of the map, you see that there are also teams in the South, West, and further Midwest mountain regions than there were in 1952. If you compare this map to the dot distribution map in your handout, you'll see that the teams' locations are more consistent with how the population is now distributed. It takes a certain concentration of population to be able to support a team by being able to attend the games. These images show patterns of settlement. A pattern is the geometric arrangement of objects in space. In rural areas, housing is typically dispersed. Sometimes towns are arranged in a nucleated pattern where they are centered around a central feature such as a church, a courthouse, or a park. Other times, settlements are arranged in a linear pattern. You see examples of towns that are organized along a street, river, or lake shore. The District of Columbia is organized in a radial pattern, or a kind of a circular pattern, similar to Paris. As we continue in our examination of the forces that shape our cultural landscape, we need to understand how phenomena move from one location to another. In geography, we examine this movement as diffusion, or the spread of a phenomenon over space through time. Phenomena could be ideas, innovations, products, new technology, culture traits, and contagious diseases, among other items. Each phenomena has an origin on Earth or a hearth. where did this phenomena begin? Who or where and why did it originate? There are two types of diffusion. So as an idea or phenomenon moves from its hearth to other places, we call this diffusion. And there are two types: relocation diffusion and expansion diffusion. Relocation diffusion, where items are moved from one area to another. This often happens because people move. So if you have a hairstyle that you created, where you are is the hearth of that hairstyle. If you move to another area and you share that hairstyle with other people, that hairstyle is being diffused through relocation diffusion. After you move, the hairstyle could expand from you. It's called expansion diffusion. So it's how the idea or innovation spreads outward from the hearth. Your hairstyle may spread from contagious diffusion because you actually do the hairstyle on another person. You're touching them and you are sharing the hairstyle. It may move as hierarchical diffusion. You are a leader in the community or you are influential, and because you have that hairstyle, other people want that hairstyle. And stimulus diffusion. An idea promotes a local experiment or change in the way people do things. Somebody likes your hairstyle, but they make a tweak to it. So your hairstyle stimulated a new hairstyle, and that's how that hairstyle is diffused. So Ethiopians migrated to Washington, D.C. and shared their style of dress, their hairstyles. They shared their food and they created restaurants. And so the initial diffusion is relocation diffusion. So again, there are three types of expansion diffusion: hierarchical, contagious, and stimulus. So hierarchical diffusion, again, you're the leader, you share the hairstyle, and the hairstyle distributes down the path. But generally, you have to think about hierarchical as somebody is the leader or somebody has more power than other people. So in the church, an idea might spread, or if you look at the Catholic Church, the idea spreads from the Pope to the priests and then gets spread to the congregation. In the district, idea might get spread from the mayor to the council and then to other areas of the community. If you have the flu, you might spread the flu by touching other people, by breathing on other people, or they may touch a surface that you touched. Contagious diffusion has to be spread through some kind of contact, whether it be in person, on the phone, or in cyberspace. There has to be contact for this type of diffusion. Another example of stimulus diffusion is the transference of an idea, innovation, or principle, which gets transformed. So we have McDonald's, where the hearth of McDonald's was in the United States, I believe in California. Over time, McDonald's has diffused all over the world. McDonald's spread to India, but Hindus don't eat beef. So Indian McDonald's serve veggie burgers, which is culturally acceptable. The idea of McDonald's burgers was acceptable, but not in its original form. So this is an example of stimulus diffusion. We are in the information age, where information and goods diffuse swiftly and easily, usually unrestricted by physical barriers such as mountains and oceans. This leads us to begin to discuss the concept of globalization, which we will continue to explore throughout the semester. Globalization is the increasing interconnectedness of different parts of the world, resulting in the expansion of cultural, economic, and political activities. It is important to consider how different groups consider the world because globalization of economic activities has come as a result of increasing connections between places and the rapid movement of goods and information around the world. Every place is part of the global economy. Transnational corporations conduct research, operate factories, and sell products in many countries, not just where its headquarters are located. Each place in the world plays a distinctive role in the global economy based on its local assets as assessed by transnational corporations. This series of images contains graphs and proportional symbol maps that show the globalization of Starbucks and McDonald's. The maps show how many Starbucks stores there are, or which places have the most Starbucks stores, and which places have the most McDonald's restaurants. The Starbucks map also shows the sources of coffee beans, paper, and sugar, which are used in the production of and consumption of the coffee and other products. Notice that some countries are sources for Starbucks products, but do not contain any stores. As we move through the semester, I would like you to continue to think about the forces that affect our local landscape. Also think about the forces that affect the global landscape as well.